Catherine Howard was the fifth wife of Henry VIII. For much of history, Catherine Howard has been portrayed as a promiscuous, silly little girl. We think of her as an airhead, as somebody who slept around and got caught doing adultery with Thomas Culpeper, which eventually ended in her execution. But actually now, with a modern perspective, the facts actually tell a completely different story. From an early age, Catherine was not really looked after by anyone in particular. Her mother died when she was very young, and her father then sent her to go and live with her step-grandmother, who is called Agnes Howard, the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk. The Dowager Duchess was supposed to be looking after Catherine and her other wards, so she looked after other young people from the wider Howard family. The Duchess was supposed to be overseeing their upbringing, overseeing their education, and then sort of helping them get positions at court, as well as finding suitable marriages in the future. Catherine was brought up and taught with the other girls in the household, and they shared a dormitory, and they lived rather freely. Essentially, the house was run like a slack boarding school, where the girls were given education, but they were also allowed to kind of run riot and run freely. And then when Catherine was about 12 years old, a music teacher was appointed to her and the other girls called Henry Mannix. He was hired to teach the girls the lute and the virginals. Although Mannix's exact date of birth isn't known, it is suspected that he was in his early to mid-20s at this point. Some even say that he was in his 30s. During these music lessons, Mannix began to groom Catherine, and she later confessed this. She said, "At the flattering and fair persuasions of Mannix, being but a young girl, I suffered him at sundry times to handle and touch the secret parts of my body." Mannix pressured her to go further, but Catherine seems to have resisted, and he was later dismissed from the household. Not that long afterwards, Catherine was then pursued by another man in the Duchess's household, her secretary, called Francis Dereham. Dereham was probably in his late 20s at this point, and before getting involved with Catherine, he'd already been involved with another of the girls in the household called Joan Bulmer. So after Joan, Dereham turned his attentions to the teenage Catherine, and the way that it began was this. Dereham would visit Catherine in her bed at night, and it was reported that, quote, "They would commonly banquet and be merry there till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Wine, strawberries, apples, and other things to make good cheer were served." Catherine herself later admitted that she had been seduced by Dereham. She said, "Francis Dereham, by many persuasions, procured me to his vicious purpose, and obtained first to lie upon my bed with his doublet and hose, and after within the bed, and finally he lay with me naked, and used me in such sort as a man doth his wife many and sundry times, but how often I know not." You know, we can now see this as grooming and statutory rape. Catherine was way too young to be able to give consent. She wasn't yet 15 years old. This situation was to last for 3 months, and Catherine was to believe herself in love. She thought that she and Dereham would eventually get married. However, Henry Mannix had found out about this situation, and he was jealous. He sent an anonymous letter to the Dowager Duchess telling her to go into Catherine's bedchamber at night because, quote, "you shall see that which shall displease you." And apparently the Dowager Duchess did do this, and she saw Dereham and Catherine embracing, but rather than having a go or flying in a rage at Dereham, she slapped Catherine. The Dowager Duchess, her step-grandmother, told Catherine off because she feared it would hurt her beauty. Although the Dowager Duchess did send Dereham away, she also blamed Catherine for allowing him to go into her bed, and rather than being concerned about the morals or the safety of the situation, she was more concerned about Catherine's beauty that could somehow get damaged from this. So there you go. Before the age of 15 or 16, Catherine had already been, in my opinion, groomed and sexually assaulted by 2 men who were vastly older than her and who were in a position of power within that household. So there we go. Poor Catherine was never to know love. She was never to be respected or cared for properly by men, or indeed anyone in her life. She was later to be married to the middle-aged, ugly, fat, tyrannical Henry VIII, and she was also to have an affair with the sexually violent Thomas Culpeper.